Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, that's not going to work. This is Microsoft Ignite, not Microsoft Fizzle. Let's try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Okay, much better. So I want to thank you all for coming to this as your first Tuesday session, 9 a.m. You are all people of discerning taste and an incredible ability to tell which are going to be the good sessions. I want to appreciate the fact that you're here. My name is David Blank-Edelman. I am a senior cloud ops advocate at Microsoft who pays a lot of attention to site reliability engineering. And that's what I'm going to introduce you to today. So the first question that will be helpful for me, just so I can sort of level set here, is how many people in the room, let's do it this way, how many people in the room have heard of SRE? Let's start with that. Wow, that's good, because otherwise why would you be here, right? Okay, that's good. How many people in here have SRE in their title? Excellent. Okay, so the people that raise their hands, if I get it wrong, you should go to them afterwards and ask them. Those of you who are those people, you should let me know afterwards, you know, like, did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? And let me know what it's like. So it's going to be my pleasure to sort of give you this brief introduction. Okay, so we did the sort of like, what is SRE thing, right? Everybody kind of knows. So let me actually do a bit of a level set to sort of like tell you what SRE is. And we're going to do like what I'm going to call an SRE 101, right? This is sort of the beginning stuff, total level set about this sort of stuff. Okay, so my best definition of SRE is this one. Site reliability engineering is an engineering discipline that is devoted to helping an organization achieve the appropriate, and we'll come back to that word in a moment, level of reliability in their systems, services, and products. Okay? This has got two really key words in it. It's got lots of words, but it's got two really key words. So the way I can show you why these words are key is on this slide here. Can somebody kindly tell me what this slide is a picture of? It's handcrafted. I spent a lot of time making this slide, so you better get this right. So what is this slide? Raise your hands so I can just, yes, sir. Say again? I heard something system, but I didn't hear that. Oh, a healthy system. Well, it's really fun to see what people see in these. Next one. Who else knows what this is? Yes, sir. Ah, okay, so this gentleman says the view out of his first floor window after a blizzard. Right, it's like a cow, a white cow in a snowstorm. No, what this is this is what it looks like when a PHP app errors out. Okay, now if it helps you at all, what I'm going to do is put this up, though I typically don't like to put up Java stack traces because people in the audience tend to twitch. So I'm going to go back to this, right? So here's the point of showing you these things. You can spend all the time, resources, money, people, marketing, anything you want, putting features into your product, into your service, into the things people use. And you can spend all the time making sure that it walks the dog and gets your dry cleaning and does all this stuff. But if your app isn't up, it's worthless to you, to the company, to the organization, right? And that's why reliability is the key word in site reliability engineering. Reliability is the thing that we will be focusing on and why it's important when we talk about this sort of stuff. There are lots of different qualities that you should have in an application, a service, a product, that sort of stuff, but reliability is the one that this engineering discipline focuses on. And the reason why this tends to be tricky is you have this little tug of war that goes on, right? You have this tug of war that goes on. It's the same tug of war that helps spawn DevOps, where on this side you have people whose job it is to add features to a product, to write code, to keep on iterating it, to keep on adding all the stuff that you could possibly want in the code. And over here, you have a group of people that are probably tasked with keeping it operational, keeping it up. And the thing is that you know, and I suspect that, let me check this. People in here are operations people? Raise your hand for a second. Yeah, okay, so everybody gets this. You know that the way to make something less stable is to be constantly changing it, right? So you have this tug of war and this tension going on that I think is tricky, and SRE attempts to deal with that, just like DevOps does. Which leads me to another sort of little disclaimer slide. One of the things that I want to make it absolutely clear about is that sometimes people talk about DevOps and SRE as if they're like the next evolutionary step for mankind. So it isn't the case that SRE is not like the next evolutionary step after DevOps. It's not like someday I'm a DevOps now and someday I hope to grow up and be an SRE. In my opinion, and there's still lots of discussion about this, SRE is just another parallel operations practice, another track that was going on at the same time trying to deal with the same issues. So when we talk about this, I just want to make sure that you have the idea, the same idea that I have, is that I'm not trying to tell you, like, wherever you are now, you need to level up. I'm not telling you that. I'm trying to say that this is an operations practice that offers you stuff that you can probably use today that will make your life better and will deal with some of these things. Whether you choose to do that or not is totally up to you, and I support you with whatever your choices are. So let's get into what SRE is. My favorite place to start comes from a talk that was given at a conference called SRECon, and I should make the disclaimer that I'm one of the co-founders, that was given by the gentleman who is the person who invented the name and the title at Google back in 2003. His name was Ben Traynor. Now he's Ben Traynor-Sloss. And he gave this talk called Keys to SRE. There's a URL there on the side, and I'll make sure that the slides are available. And in that talk, he laid out, since he was the one who started it all, what he thought was the keys to SRE. What were the things that you had to be if you were going to do SRE? I will put up a slide that is a dramatic recreation of it because I did not get the slide directly from Ben, but I'm sure he'd be fine. You don't have to read this now because we're going to go through this together. Okay? So I see somebody taking a picture, but what I'm going to do is do this to make the people taking pictures make it harder for you, so we can concentrate on the things we're going to concentrate on. Ha! I'm in control. Okay, so here's the place that we're going to start in his slides. So 3 of his bullets said, first off, you need to have an SLA for your service, which is kind of strange because they don't actually use the term SLA within Google. I wasn't quite sure why he did that. Measure and report performance gains against this SLA and use error budgets and gate launches on them. Now that may seem sort of like a wee bit more gobbledygook than you want. Let me see if I can break that down in an easy sort of way. So the first step is, let's say you've got a service and you're trying to increase its reliability or work with its reliability. Well, the first thing you have to do is figure out, what does it mean for that thing to be reliable? What does it mean to be up? There's lots of possibilities. And in fact, we'll be talking about SLOs in another session on Thursday, per se. But you want to come up with some idea for what are the indicators for what does it mean to be up? What is the level of reliability? Is it returning 200 80% of the time? Is it got a latency of a certain amount? What does it mean? So with that information in mind, you come up with a service level objective, the objective for how up you want this to be. And when I say you, I mean you collectively. You, the SRE, you, the developer, you, the product team, you, the PM, you know, the business. All the people get together and they figure out what is the objective for this particular service. Once you have that objective, you place it into your monitoring system, into some place that is going to be sort of the objective source of truth in your environment. Whatever you use for monitoring, be it Azure Monitor, be it anything, right? You put it in there so that everybody in the business can look at the monitoring and say, I see that it's been up 60% of the time, or I've seen it's been up 80% of the time. So let's work with that 80% of the time in a second. One of the things that I want to make sure that we're going to talk about later is why I'm not saying 100%, because that's also pretty much a key. So hold that in your head. But let's assume that my SLO is that I want my thing to be up 80%. And the reason why I'm not using 9s is I find that 9s are harder to talk about from stage, you know, like 5 9s, 4 9s, 3 9s, because people don't have an intuitive sense. But if I say I want it up 80% of the time, everybody in their head can go, oh, okay, 80%, I get that. So once you've got it in your monitoring system, and everybody can look at that information, this objective source of information, then when it comes time to figure out whether you're going to do a release or what you're going to work on, you can look at your monitoring system. Now, let's say your SLO is 80%, and you look at your monitoring system and you find out, hey, awesome, my service, product, whatever, has been up 90% of the time. Well, great. Maybe you update the service. Maybe you roll a release out. But if you look at the service and it was 60% of the time and you wanted an SLO of 80% of the time, well, then you've got to make a choice here. Then you can say, well, hey, maybe what we should do is start gating our releases until we figured out why the reliability isn't where it needs to be. And this is the fundamental idea behind error budgets. And we'll be going into that sort of stuff in another session. But that's the fundamental idea. This is when you hear SREs talk about error budgets, this is the fundamental idea that you might be able to look at your reliability and decide what you're going to do based on how reliable something is. Does that make sense? Yes? No? Deep nods? Okay. That's the key. That's a key thing. So that's the thing. And the thing that I want to say about this, right, that's what these three things meant, is one of the things that SRE is very, very much about is creating these virtuous feedback loops. Because you can imagine in this situation where you have an error budget, and what we were just doing, you get this awesome feedback loop that tends towards more reliable. Right? If in fact something is reliable, then you can continue to rev things. If it tends to be less reliable, then everybody agrees what they're going to do is spend some time paying attention to that. Right? And you get these great feedback loops. And that's a key part of SRE-dom, if there's such a term. Okay, so another set of things that I think is an important virtuous loop is at the very bottom. I'm sorry for the people in the back. I'll read it to you. It says that there should be a post-mortem, some people say post-incident review, whatever term you want, for every event. And when Ben says this, he means it for every significant event. He doesn't mean like, I brushed my teeth today, let's all get in a war room, right? He means, a severity level of something. Right? And the thing that's important, and this is perhaps one of the more crucial bullets in the slide, is that the postmortems have to be blameless. They have to focus on the process and the technology, not the people. Okay? So the question in your postmortem is not, how did Bob or Susan or Pat or Fred screw up? But what was it that allowed them to push the wrong button? What feedback did they not have? What was the information they didn't have near them? How did our system have a -- nuke the entire data center flag that was easy to type, right? Right. So it's that sort of thing that you're really trying to look at. Because the important thing to understand here is you can't fire your way to reliable, right? If, in fact, your default mechanism every time something goes wrong in your company is to fire the person responsible for it, what you get is one person sitting in the corner with a cigarette shaking all day long, right? You don't get a more reliable system. You just have, a hiring problem, right? And nobody should go to work from you because you're terrible, right? So it's important to understand this, that this is the sort of virtuous loops that get you to reliable, not firing people. Okay, so let's talk about another thing that's kind of interesting about the way Google thinks about it, and they still think about it this way. So one of the things that I think that's going to thrill you to death, you ops folks, is that they believe that excessive ops work should overflow to the dev team. If, in fact, your service is so noisy, so paging, so terrible to keep up, at a certain point, what you should start to do is hand the pager back to the fine folks who developed it. Because one of the things that the people in this room know is that if you hand a pager to a developer and it goes off at 2 a.m., and it goes off maybe once or twice, that bug that is making it go off at 2 a.m. will not be in the code in a day or two, right? So there's something about that. It's also important to realize that, and this is the human aspect of things, that they cap the operational load at 50%. If you spend your entire day firefighting, if you spend your entire day and all your weeks firefighting, or just doing tickets, I'm doing tickets, I'm processing the project queue, you can never have some time to do the project work necessary to improve the reliability of the system. And if you do that, it's just a losing game and you're sad. Right? So it's important to be able to cap the operational load at a certain amount. Now, 50% is an arbitrary number, and does everybody in Google do this? No. The last time they took a poll, it was like they were under 50%. But sometimes, and the thing that I realize is this is not saying always, always, and forever. There are some times where you're going to have bad weeks. I'm not trying to sugarcoat this. There are going to be some times where things are going to go really bad for a couple of weeks, and your operational load is going to spike to 200%. That's the being woken up percent, right? But ideally, what you're trying to shoot for is a steady state where it's 50%. And they also suggest you share 5% of the ops work with dev team. Okay, sure. The other thing that they also are very keen on, and I hope that you folks are as well, is balancing out their on-call load and making sure that there are enough people such that one person isn't getting constantly woken up, because there are real problems with too much on-call and too much being woken up, right? Like problems documented in medical literature, right? So this is kind of key. And one of the things that they also try to do is they try to make sure that there are only 2 pages out per shift, which sounds, I think, luxurious to me, but they attempt to do that. Okay, so here's the thing. The reason why I'm talking about that section of his stuff and that it's important for you to understand is that people, I mean, this sounds so ridiculously simple, but it is the case, and you all know this, that people build systems. So if you burn your people out, burnt out people do not build reliable systems. It's almost like a corollary to Conway's Law, right? Which said, we all know, I mean, I feel it's important to mention Conway's Law in a DevOps or SRE talk, or they take away your license. Does everybody know what so Melvin Conway was an awesome researcher who came up with this notion that gets cited over and over again that says, typically, the way people build software is representational of their organizational structure. And the easiest way to say that to people is, let's assume you are a company and you're building a compiler. Let's say you have 2 groups that are working on that compiler. Your compiler will be a 2-pass compiler, right? Just because the software will mirror what the organization looks like. And so what I want to say to you is that's true in the land of reliability as well. If, in fact, you're burning your people out, if, in fact, you've constructed a situation where the people themselves can't be reliable because they're exhausted, because they're overworked, because they don't get a chance to make any progress, then your systems are going to reflect that too, and it's not good for your business. It's not good for you, it's not good for the business, it's not good for the world, so cut it out. Now, now it may be the case that the folks in this room don't have control over that, but I want it to be on your mind, at the very least, when you're speaking to people there. So, congratulations. That is SRE 101. Are there any questions before you get your degree? Start over there, please. I will hand you like a diploma, and then you can go up. Yes, please. Okay, so you asked several questions. I'm going to try to repeat them back to you and get them right. If I get them wrong, you'll let me know. So the first question is, this sounds like managed services. Welcome to operations. That's, I guess, what I want to say to you, is I want to say that, like, this is my point about DevOps as well. The stuff that we're working on here is all trying to deal with the same challenges. So you can put whatever name works for you. The difference, I think, between managed services and this is that the SRE is meant to explicitly be an engineering discipline. It uses engineering techniques, mindset, tools, and et cetera, to approach things around reliability. So managed service might be about managing, but reliability is a different focus, right? So a little bit of the difference here is not are my systems well managed, but are they reliable? If that's the first, that's the answer to the first part. The second question is, what's up with Gartner? Why haven't I heard anything from them about that? So I spend a reasonable amount of my time chatting with analysts from Gartner and Forrester and all the other fine folk, and they are super interesting. And there are Forrester reports out on this sort of stuff. And I hung out with some Gartner people as well. I am really expecting you to see more about this. One of the reasons why you haven't seen this as much is that SRE started out in sort of a cloistered environment, right? It started out deep in the bowels of Google, and then it spread to other places where people like left Google and went working other places, or they heard about it. And it's only until fairly recently that SRE as a place where people get together and talk about it has come together, the conferences and stuff like that. And also, the SRE books being put out by Google. It took a while for people to actually talk about this, because at some point they were thinking, oh, this is really super secret stuff, or maybe other people don't want to know about this. My opinion is that you are going to see SRE, because if somebody says to you, say, how do they run Google? Is that a managed service thing? You're going to hear them say, no, that's SRE. How do they run Twitter? How do they run Microsoft? How do they run, just saying, how do they run Spotify? How do they run these sort of things? If you look behind how they run, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this talk, you'll see that that's site reliability engineering. It hasn't been talked about as much, but I'm suspecting you're going to hear more about it, and it's starting right now. So there you go. Any other questions? Yes, sir. So how does this interface with application devs who are trying to be full stack people? So the short answer to that question is, The same way, say, a security person might interface with those people, right? It isn't the case when you have a security person in your organization that all of the security is on that person, right? They are there to be sort of specialists paying attention to a particular aspect of the system. SREs can be that as well, and we'll see that when we talk about the organizational stuff as well. Does that help answer your question? Because it's not the case that once you get an SRE, congratulations, all the reliability is that person's responsibility. Like if that happens, you're in bad shape, right? Yes, sir. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's really good. So my boss was kind enough to remind me that there's another session. I mean, I'm just being honest here. That there's another session coming up where somebody from the VSTS team, which also is a heavy DevOps shop, also does site reliability, and this person is going to be talking about SRE, and that will give you another answer into this question. That's a great answer. Thank you, Steve. Okay, so let's talk about organizational implementations of SRE. Like, how does it actually manifest in an organization? Which makes for your question was a lovely segue, and I want to appreciate that. I will give you a badge later, or money or something. Okay, so the place where this all started is sort of in the land of Google, so I want to just talk about them first. So they have a centralized ladder. There's an SRE ladder right there, and they partner with product teams. So it is the case almost always that you're an SRE and you're a Maps SRE, or you're a Gmail SRE, or you're whatever, because you are partnering with the dev team along these lines. And they do it for geodiversity. Usually they split into two, so they can like have half the people in this time zone and half the people in the far time zone. One of the things that's interesting about Google is they treat SRE as a scarce resource. You have to work to get an SRE on your team. You have to work to get it associated with your product. You have to show that your product is at a sufficient level of operational maturity before they think they can add value to it and will assign an SRE to you. Kind of an interesting approach. And all right, that's what I was saying about the mature stuff. It's also the case that they are really big on making sure that the team sizes are a certain thing. That's for the on-call rotations we were talking about before. If they're not big enough, you can't have an on-call rotation that doesn't burn somebody out. Okay, now that was Google. What about other places? So here's just a small list, and this is not even close to being up to date of SRE, of where you find SREs, right? So when you ask that question about managed services, the direct answer to that question is you might have heard of these companies here. This is how they do it, right? So that's why I think that Gartner is going to be paying attention, and is actually paying attention. I know because they talked to me. So I'm going to just pick a few out of this list and talk about them. Oh, look, it's being captioned as we go. I didn't even know that. That's really cool. Okay, so the next place I want to talk about is Facebook. So Facebook has what they call production engineers. They don't call them SREs, but everybody knows they're SREs, and the guy that runs it will tell you they're SREs too. And that guy is Pedro. He's a really cool guy. He gave the second keynote the second year we had SRECon, and he discussed what production engineers were and what production engineering was. Here's his big definition. I'm sorry for all the words. I'm going to read it to you. Production engineers at Facebook are hybrid software systems engineers who ensure that Facebook services run smoothly and have the capacity for future growth. They are embedded in every one of Facebook's product and infrastructure teams and are core participants in every significant engineering effort underway in the company. Now, who in this room can tell me the most important word on that slide? Yeah, somebody said embedded. You're absolutely right. Well done. So that's an interesting, different model, right, which is kind of going to your question. It is the case that in Facebook, SREs, or production engineers, Ps, I should use the right term for them, do in fact embed themselves into the product dev teams and participate as part of one of those teams. They're not as separate as you might experience in a Google environment. Other stuff is they say there's about a 1-to-10 ratio of PEs to people that are doing the development stuff. You go and spend an 18, 24, 36-month time with a service. There's sort of a rotation idea. And the thing to understand that Pedro is very clear about when he talks to me about this is that it's not a SWAT team. It isn't like somebody goes hot, 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 and rappels down the side of the building and makes your system more reliable, right? It's not that. Nor are they ticket monkeys. Right? It's not the case they're like, oh, goody, we got a production engineer. They'll do all the tickets. Right? That's not the way it works. At least I hope that. And the other thing to realize is that the, sort of the thing that everybody's heard about where you start at Facebook is you go through this boot camp thing. Well, so do the production engineers. And here's another really kind of interesting factoid. The lead on the Facebook head of engineering, so Pedro, the person who runs production engineering at Facebook, reports up to the head of engineering, the same head of engineering for whom all the development organizations point into. And he says that this is crucial. He says it's absolutely crucial that it all comes together really quickly in the organizational tree. So when you're starting to make those hard decisions, which you occasionally have to do about whether we spend time on the operational side of stuff or in the development side of stuff, it goes one place instead of going up the tree where the CEO has to try to figure it out. Right? So that's really kind of crucial to him. In fact, I think I made it red because it was so crucial to him. So the thing that I want to make mention about this, and that's kind of important here, is that SRE requires management support at the highest levels. If you're going to do things like gate releases because things aren't reliable enough, you've got to have, somebody's going to have your back. So it's really important if you're thinking about doing SRE that you get this management stuff. The other thing that I want to make sure before I go on to the next one, and I'm going to just sort of insert this in, is I want to make sure, well, actually, we'll come back to that later. I'll insert that later, because I want to just go through these just so you get these. Spotify. So Spotify is a weird and interesting company in that it is a very decentralized company, right? Everybody in the company, it is the case that balkanized is the wrong word because they're not like that, but it is the case that they have a bunch of things where there are squads, and they call them tribes. It's like Agile run amok is the way I kind of speak about it, where various teams work very separately. There is no one SRE team, right? There is no one infrastructure team. There's a tribe called IO, and they provide some of the centralized infrastructure, but you don't have to use their stuff if you don't want to. But they would like you to, but you don't have to use their stuff if you want to. So it's super decentralized. There's no SRE org, though people do get together in working groups to work on that sort of stuff. And they have something they call ops in squads, right? Squads are their thing. So they have operation people that show up and work as part of those squads. So the other thing that they have that's kind of interesting to me is they have something they call the golden path, which they've talked about, which is because it's so decentralized and because you don't have to use the centralized stuff if you don't want, there is a known good way to get an application from your brain up into production. And that's called the golden path. If you follow these steps, it will for sure work. And they publicize that, and that's very clear what that path is. And that's one of the ways that they sort of handle this decentralization. So I want to state very clearly that there's no one right way to construct an SRE team. There are wrong ways, and if you want to talk about wrong ways, we can certainly talk about it either from stage or personally later. I'd be happy to talk about that. But there's no one right way. So, okay. So I want to talk about getting started with SRE as sort of kind of the final bit of what we're going to be talking about here. So one of the things that I want to say before I get to sort of the getting started is I want to sort of riff off a little bit more on a comment that I gave before off to the side about 100% reliability. Can anybody in this room tell me why 100% reliability is a bad idea to shoot for as a goal? Yes. It's not achievable. That's one. That's really good. Two. Go ahead. Say again, please. Users can't tell. That's even better. Okay, I'm going to talk about that one in a second. Good. Good. You're doing my job for me. I love this. Go ahead. Well, you're both doing it at the same time. Did you have the same thing to say? Because it'd be cool if it was harmony. I want you. Want to do it? The person with the longer beard first, and then the shorter beard second. You'll never learn from failure. Oh, that's interesting. I have to think about that. We're going to talk about that. Maybe we'll talk about this afterwards. And yes, sir, you behind, please. You have your hand up. No? No error budget? We can talk about that in a moment. Sure, that's an interesting idea. Could it be too expensive? Yeah. Anything else? I'm looking, this side of the room is doing all the work here. Yes, sir. Oh, you guys are so good. I love Microsoft Ignite. Yes, this gentleman over here said you're only as good as your dependent systems. So let's dive in. Let me repeat back some of this stuff in my own words. If I get what you're saying wrong, let me know. And I think there might be others that you can think of. So the first thing to realize, as someone said, and I want to be clear about this, there are times where 100% reliability is kind of the thing you want to shoot for. Those things that fly, that we all fly in, yeah, that's kind of really important. the thing that ticks in your chest, yeah, that should not really miss, there shouldn't be a lot of downtime there, right? Right, that sort of stuff, like medical technology or aviation, please, if anybody in this room works on that sort of stuff, ignore the shouldn't be 100% thing, please. I'm a consumer too. Okay, but in most cases, it is the case that first off, it's not even possible to get to 100% reliable, because 100% reliable means a few things. At the very least, to get to 100% reliable, it means congratulations, you are probably never ever changing the system, right? Because changing and perturbing the system in some way, almost by definition, can lead to less reliability, even if it's tiny bits less, right? It's really super hard to do this. The statement about the dependencies is absolutely true. The example that I really like that Dave Renson at Google gives is like, okay, so let's assume you're awesome and your system is up 100% of the time. But guess what? The cable system and all the intermediate path, at the very least, to your system is probably not up 100% of the time. I don't know about you, but my cable provider isn't up 100% of the time. So you have just wasted the money. Right? While they're down and your thing's reliable and you put a lot of money in, it is the case that's up. And then if you have, so there are two ways to think about this. If you have dependencies, if you are trying to get something in from somebody else, some other system, if you're a client of something else, and often you are, be it your network, be it, other services and stuff like that, they are probably not up 100% of the time. So, and so spending this time is a waste of time and money if you're shooting this, and it gets really expensive. The more nines you have, the more dollars go flowing past you, right? As you try to hit that. So that's another thing. Now, to the point that somebody said about error budgets, so let's talk a little bit about error budgets. So the interesting thing about error budgets is they're an attempt to sort of give you this pool of unreliability, this period of time, and I'll talk about this in another session later, this period of time where if I agree that things have to be 80% reliable, if I am more reliable than this means that I've got from 80% to 100% to play, because I have met my spec, I've met my objective. So all this time gives me the ability to do cool stuff. That's not what I would say would be a primary driver for this sort of stuff, but it's also sort of a thing to realize is that if you want to have the opportunity to change your systems more, to be more experimental and stuff like that, and you're shooting for 100%, no can do, is what I want to say. Any other questions or points about that before we talk about how do you get started with this stuff? Okay, so let's talk about how to get started. So my suggestion is there are 3 books out from O'Reilly, and again, another disclaimer, I edited and curated the last one, the cuddly one I want to point out. That was my choice, that was my ask of the design group. I don't care what it is, it just says we should be cuddly, and it's a lemur in case you're curious. These are superb books. So the first book was the original SRE book, and it's a good description of what Google was thinking, how they do stuff. Some people object to the book because despite their best interest, it has a little bit of the Google voice, like we invented things, and the stuff that we invented is necessarily cooler than other things. It's not intentional, but it's in there, and some people reacted very harshly to that. See if you could put on a high bandpass filter and just say, what did they do? But the thing to realize is this is what Google did. This doesn't say that you are Google, and if you are Google, then you should let Google know because they're not aware of it. But if you're not Google, you should just look at this and realize, like, okay, what are the things that are applicable to me? Then they decided what they would do is come out with a second, more practical book called the Site Reliability Workbook, which is also superb. And it attempts to be more about sort of the implementation and also includes some other stuff about how other people are doing things. There's some case studies from elsewhere. But it's a really nice example. So like if you were like, oh, okay, I get that they say you were doing this, but how did they actually do that? So it adds a little bit of the how to it. And then I thought what I would try to do is I would try to expand the conversation. So when I go to conferences like this, when I go to SRE cons and stuff like that, and I hear people talking about how they do SRE and how it differs from places, how Microsoft, how other places does SRE. And I'll talk about why Microsoft is not one of the worked examples that I'm giving you now. I decided like, hey, we should sort of get the breadth of this out there. And so that book attempts to be a bunch of interesting conversations with people about how does it get done at various places, what are the next things that you're going to have to learn to do SRE or that will become commonplace that aren't commonplace now. It's got stuff in there like the human aspects of SRE, which is to me super, super important. And so if you're looking for sort of a more wide view of it, that's a good place to start. Along these lines. But I would recommend reading this actually in this order, exactly like that. And like I said, they're really good books. Okay. The other thing that I think is absolutely crucial is to spend some time talking to people who are trying to do the same thing that you are doing, right? Who are having these challenges, who can tell you, yeah, here's what I did, here are the mistakes we made, here's the things we haven't solved yet, what are you doing? Have these conversations. One place to have these conversations, and again, I have a real interest in this because I helped start this, is SRECon. There are 3 of them around the world. And they're all very interesting and good. But this SRE discussions are going on now at LISA. They're going on now at Velocity. They're going on now at Microsoft Ignite. Welcome to the first session about SRE, and I'd be happy to hang out with you afterwards and talk to you for hours about this stuff because I love it so much. So I think that's like an important thing to understand is that talk to other people, right? Don't try to do this in isolation. That's my experience. Okay, so how do you personally start? Here's the way I usually tell people. In my experience, people tend to have either a problem or a downtime or a bad day at work or a bad week or a bad month or a bad year at work, and they're like, okay, we cannot keep on going like this. We got to figure out how to deal with both the reliability challenge and being able to keep up a feature velocity that works for our marketplace. Or they just wake up one day and say, aha, I have seen the light. It is SRE, and I will embrace you. That doesn't happen so often. But when it does, it's really good. Okay. Then the next step, in my opinion, is you have to talk to your management, right? Your management has to be behind this idea that you are going to place your focus on reliability as a primary component of what you're trying to do. And the thing is that typically management and business, especially if you talk to them in this way, are really down with it. If you say, hey, you know all that money you put into engineering and stuff like that, it goes down the toilet every time we have a downtime. Do you think we should maybe focus on making sure that we have fewer downtimes so your money goes farther and it is more useful? And you will be surprised how easy a sell that is. It's so easy to say like, hey, like if we focus on reliability, just imagine, like how much further your dollars will go, right? The other thing to realize is like when you have downtimes, in addition to burning your people, you're burning your reputation, you're not making money or serving the planet or doing whatever your system does, right? And so everybody does have a vested interest in reliability. But get your management to be down with this, because the thing is, if at some point when you get to the point where you're going to have to start make hard decisions, like a hard decision can be, and not everybody does this. Let's say your error budget is exhausted. I don't mean tired. I mean like you've used it up. Let's say you've used up your error budget and there isn't the case that that your system has been reliable enough that month, and somebody comes to you and says, I would like to release the most amazing featureful thing that is an entirely new code base. Maybe that's the right thing to do, maybe it's not the right thing to do, but it's a discussion you should have. And ideally you've had a discussion about it before they come to you, right? As part of the construction of the error budget. And we'll talk about that again, as I said, on Thursday. So that's kind of really important. So I recommend reading the books critically. I recently heard Damon Edwards suggest, Damon suggests that we have SRE book groups. I'm not suggesting like it's like Bible study, and I don't suggest you like, let us now turn to page 37 and read the hymnal that is there in the SRE book. But it is not a bad idea to get together with other people and read it together and say, like, what do you think? Will this work here? Do you think this is interesting? And just pick a thing to talk about. Let's talk about our post-mortem reviews. Let's get those. Let's have a discussion about that. Let's see what it says here. That's what I suggest. I highly suggest that. As I said before, hang out with other people in your company and outside your company who are thinking about this sort of stuff. That's super critical to get with other people, because quite frankly, it's just like Soylent Green. SRE is people, right? It's really kind of important Sorry, that's a small science fiction joke, Harry Harrison. Anyway, okay. And then the other thing that I suggest to people is now it's time to sort of dip your toe into SLOs and error budgets. So pick a service. Doesn't even have to be your most, in fact, I recommend it's not, your most important service. But pick a service, one that you can get your head around, one that you understand, and try to come up with a set of service level objectives for it. Try to sit down, figure out what the objectives are, and we'll talk about how to do that, like I said, on Thursday. But get together, do that sort of stuff. Put that stuff into your monitoring system. Watch it for a while. I'm not suggesting that like immediately go out and start gating releases like, you're below reliability, we're not going to be able to release. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying put it in your monitoring system and see. See what happens. See whether you're making your goals. See whether your goals are good enough. Spend some time just getting used to and comfortable with that. And what you might find is that what's going to happen is that just doing that is going to start to cause you to have the discussions within your organization that are positive, that tend towards reliability. The very first discussion is when you go to the first time you go to a developer and say to them, "What do you mean by up? How can I tell whether your service is reliable? What do you think in your head, the stuff that you haven't told anybody else? How am I going to tell whether it's working or not?" That conversation right there is like a critical place to start. And they will be like, "Wait, somebody from operations wants to know what I think?" They will be ecstatic to see you, I'm telling you, especially if you don't stand there like Peter Pan like this. But I'm suggesting that you go there and you have these conversations. And then later on, when everybody's looking at the same monitoring system for the first time, maybe the developers didn't even know you had that thing there, right? And everybody's looking at, and you're having these discussions about, well, last month or the last 30 days, I see that we didn't make our goal. What were the kind of failures that we saw during that? What does our postmortem say? Those conversations that you get out of this, these virtuous cycles, is a great start. And then at some point, you're going to go, "Hey, I kind of like this. Maybe we should do this more. Maybe we should do this for more services." And you can do a sort of a skunkworks way of doing that or other ways. What I don't suggest is, and this sometimes happens, I do not suggest title flipping as a method of SRE implementation. Congratulations. In fact, I could do it right now. Everybody in this room is now an SRE. Congratulations. You win. SRE is now in your company. Like, that doesn't work, right? Like, it doesn't make sense in this room. It doesn't make sense when you go back. But some companies try to do that, where they're like, "Oh, we'll be aspirational. We'll call you SREs, but we won't do anything different. But now you're SREs," right? Bad. Don't do that. Won't get you the benefits that we're talking about here. Might get you a pay bump, but I don't think it's a good idea. Might get other people, but it just won't get you what you're looking for. Okay, so the cool thing about SRE and SRE at Ignite is that there's going to be more of it. This is the very first session that is talking about that I'm aware of at Ignite ever. So you are a part of a historical moment right here where we are starting the conversation about SRE at Ignite. I think you're going to see it a lot more. I think you're going to see it in a lot of different places. I think you're going to see it in Gardner, and you were here for the very first one. But it's not the only one. In just a short while, there's going to be a really awesome conversation about incident response, which is one of those things that we were talking about before that's a crucial virtuous cycle to get your handle around. And then on Thursday, if you hate me, don't come back. But if you want to hear me speak more, I'm going to dive more into SLIs and SLOs. Right? Those things that we were talking about. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about how do you construct them? What are they made out of? What do they look like? What do they taste like? Where can I get one for my kid? Like all these sort of things. Actually, I'm not going to mention that at all. But, and then the very last talk is also, to my mind, super cool, because if you're sitting here thinking to yourself, wait a second, this is all cool, but there's no way I could ever possibly do this stuff in my environment. There's no way I can, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not going to be able to do site reliability engineering. Well, have I got the speaker for you? So Jared right over here will be up on stage at the very last one of these and talking about how he went from the position of being, the sysadmin that I was too for, and I have been for all my life, right, into being in an SRE role and what it's like, what you need to know, how to think about it, and his personal journey. And to my mind, that's a really good hero's journey that you should see. So, okay, with that, I put this slide up. I really, really enjoy talking to people about that sort of stuff, so you should not hesitate to contact me or speak to me here at Ignite. I will say one thing about LinkedIn. Pretty please talk to me before sending me a connect request. I'm old school, and I like to connect with the people that I've at least heard of. So come up to me and like send me a note that says, hey, we talked at my MS Ignite. I would love to be your best buddy on LinkedIn, and I'm all down with that. But if you're like, hey, if you do something that says, I would like to connect with you, lots of people want to connect with me, sort of thing. So that's my talk. I'd like to answer any questions I can about SRE. We're doing great on time. So I'd like to just make sure. Yes, sir. So how does security and DevSecOps benefit from SRE? I think I have a couple of answers to that question. The first answer to that question is I think it's really important for them to understand that they are kissing cousins. That they have similar situations where their job is to focus on a particular aspect of the system, to bring the system to be a resource, and to also be the people that people don't hate, right? That was always been the security problem, right? How not to be a person. So I think that they can learn from each other in that regard. I think that because reliability means a lot of things, one of the things that it means is making sure that you are always trying to meet customer expectations. And so when we talk about SLOs and SLIs, you'll hear me talk about how that's from a customer's point of view. I think that strange enough security is too, where the goal is nobody expects that their data is going to get broken into and lost. Nobody expects that their privacy is going to be violated. So one of the people that stands in between that possibility is DevSecOps and similarly SREs. So it is the case that SREs also tend to have a security mindset. They're not just like, will this stay up, but make sure that everybody can break into our database 24/7. That is not what they're doing. They're not trying to make it reliable for people to infiltrate your system. They also care about the security aspect of things. So that would be my two answers to your question. Other questions? Yes, sir. So the question is, how many years should somebody who's been in IT have before they start going into SRE? Is that your question? It is now Tuesday. I think whatever that amount is, it could be Wednesday, would be totally fine. So I think, it isn't the case, so the thing I want you to understand, it isn't the case that SREs are necessarily superhuman beings who have been through SEAL training, right, and who have spent a lot of their time in, behind enemy lines doing stuff. It is the case that there's stuff that SREs typically encounter that may not be in the usual IT stuff. An example of that would be to have some sense of how distributed systems work, right, or large-scale systems. They spend some time thinking about scale, and so I think IT thinks about scale as well. So if you have focused on what that means, or if you focused on reliability, I really don't think, I'm trying to make sure that people don't feel like there's this big, huge chasm that they have to cross, because I don't think that's true. I really don't think so. I don't think there's so for example, I believe that you can be a good SRE coming right out of college without a lot of professional experience. Now, you will have to learn, and you will become much better over time, and you will be an even better SRE N years down the job doing it, just like you would in IT. But I don't believe personally that you have to have a certain level of thing before you can join the secret society called SRE. That's my personal feeling about it. So if you wanted to step out of this room right now and start doing it, you're already ready, and I don't even know you. That's what I think. Now, I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit of sort of like what resources you can look at for the stuff that you might want to pay attention to think more about scale, more about distributed systems, more about some of the things that SREs, especially at a large scale, deal with. Happy to talk about that you may not have encountered. But besides that, can you debug things? Can you write code that also helps? There's a coding aspect sometimes to this sort of stuff. Those are some of the things that I would pay attention to. Yes, sir. So the question is, what environments do SREs typically monitor? Is it only production, or is it, you said in-flight. Do you mean staging when you say in-flight? I'm not sure I know that term.
Yeah, I mean, somewhere where you have emulated API calls.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Okay, so he's talking about environments where we're simulating production, right? That sort of stuff like that. I don't think there's a specification here. I think that SREs get involved in all these things because, quite frankly, that environment has to be up too, right? You know, so the thing to understand is again, it's especially around customer stuff, right? When you think about, and look, we're 4 minutes over time, so I'll take yours as the last question. Oh, and everybody just realized it. So, sorry, these questions are so good. So I think that environment has to be up, and people care about it too, right? So I think that the SREs are production focused. I would like to assume that your in-flight stuff is production-oriented. So same, if that answers your question. So thank you so much for your time and your attention, and for coming here at 9 a.m. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of MS Ignite.